Okay. Should I go or wait or? Okay. I know I got from one of the groups, I got their story, their speculative fiction, and I pasted it into a Google Doc. And then I sent the link to them, which was Rui, Utpal, and one other person.
Okay.
And I said, can you send to the group chat this link so that instead of emailing me, everybody can just put it in the Google Doc. And yeah, add it to the Google Doc. Yeah. And you can add it in the same format they did. There's like a title and the names of the people. And, you know. Yeah. So does this course get you credit somehow? Like, does this help with your degree, or is this more just like extra knowledge? Okay. Same for you? Yeah. Okay. That means you're very dedicated. That's great.
Trying to learn something new also.
Yeah.
And apply it to some missionary interactions. To get some ideas.
Yeah. That's great. I hope it's useful. Yeah.
So it will be, it's not only for knowledge, but to apply it in the place where I work. It will be useful.
Yeah, that's good. You can use it at work.
And in case in the future, if you have time, if there's something that I could come up with, and if you have time, please have a look at it and
Maybe.
advise. I'll be very busy.
If you send me something while I'm still in India, I have more time, right? Yeah. Yeah, I was saying if anybody has ideas for projects or something you want to run by me while I'm still here in India, I have more time, right? Because I can't do my normal stuff as well, so I can focus on this.
So you are here till this week, or would you be?
I'm leaving on the 13th. So on Sunday I go to Delhi for 2 days, and then Wednesday leave. Wednesday is the long airplane.
Have you worked on human vibration?
I haven't done human vibration. I mean, the only thing I did was there's this game called laser tag in the US, and you go at the amusement park and you put on a vest and you have a gun and you shoot your friends.
Hand arm vibration, whole body vibration.
Yeah, and it'll vibrate when you're shot in the game.
Yeah.
And so I had a student who wanted to do better resolution. So he said, I don't want my chest to vibrate when I'm shot in my foot. I want to have vibration all on the different body parts.
Yeah.
So he made this outfit, like a vest with like 24 pagers, vibrating pagers. And then it could vibrate your shoulder or your back or wherever. And he had some in the pants. But then and it was effective, so he got a master's thesis out of it. But you had to carry around this like 4-kilogram battery like on your belt. It's like it was heavy. So it wasn't great for that part. But that's the closest I've gotten to vibration.
So what just now I was asking, that agricultural equipment and
Yeah.
vibration. So like the earth movers or heavy earth movers, hilly terrains, so that whatever the vehicles move. So because of that uneven terrains,
Right.
that vibration comes through the feet or that contact.
Yeah, that's right.
So that move on to the whole body.
Yeah.
And that basically creates the MSDs in the human body.
I know that the John Deere cabs have a lot of cushions and springs, but not everybody.
All the cushions are there, but as our new vehicle goes older, so that efficiency gets reduced. And most of these industries, they are not having the brand new ones. So
Right.
it runs for the say 10 years, 20 years, and odd numbers.
Okay.
Okay. So what about the drivers who are using that one?
Yeah, and they may have older systems.
Yeah, and that is the frequency. Frequency is more of that.
Yeah. So is your hope to, you know, if I have that older tractor, say, you hope that there's a device you could put on their chair and then
Yeah.
they sit on this thing and this thing does some dampening or something? Okay.
Not dampening, but we can find out how much it is transmitting.
Oh, first like sensor.
Yeah.
So it's just a sensor first.
Force transmission.
I was thinking it could be like noise canceling headphones, but with
And,
vibration.
then that is the remedy
Yeah,
that we can propose.
yeah,
Like if this we are using, then you will not get. First, I have to identify.
yeah, and describe it. Okay. So I have colleagues who would be interested in helping with that. That's not me, but
Okay, no issue.
yeah, yeah.
One more case, you mentioned about vibration. So in industries, okay.
I don't know. Am I supposed to start soon or? I mean, I don't know.
So just
I
I'll
just- yeah.
make it short. Like vibration-based condition monitoring is there. So that means where machinery is going to develop some faults. So vibration is a signal, just like the doctor uses a stick
Sure.
to monitors. So vibration is a signal of the machines.
Yeah.
So using that, there are some digital displays or alarms or maybe some interactions, and the machine operator usually doesn't know the technology of the vibration, so he goes by these displays.
Hmm.
So maybe there we can apply whatever we are learning from this course. So how we can apply to better communicate that the vibrations are changing, or the diagnosis of the machines.
Yeah.
So that can be better conveyed to the operators.
Nice. And when you're saying missions, these are military or?
No. Just I'm talking about machines used in the industries, like rotating machines.
Okay. Okay.
Like jet engines.
Like
Jet engines.
jet engines. Oh yeah. So then it could.
So you go to any power plant or machine shop. So everywhere we have rotating machinery. So there is definitely vibrations there.
Hmm. Okay.
It is a way of monitoring those machines.
Nice.
We can
Good.
start now.
Okay. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's a little bit earlier. So today I understand our schedule's a little different. We're going to go 9 to 12 or so, right? 9 to 12 and then stop for the day. So no afternoon because there's another meeting I have to do. So it's just 9 to 12. So we'll go about roughly 90 minutes and a break and 90 minutes, something like that. Right? Okay. So today, you know, we talked yesterday about the game. You analyzed the game, and I said this was single-person game, and how would this be different than the real world? And the real world, everybody said it was going to have multiple people, right? So I thought I would look at the multiple people, and how do you analyze, what are some of the techniques for analyzing team? But you can also imagine a team where there's a person who talks frequently, but what they're doing is facilitating. They're saying, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And they're talking the most, but they're really doing a great job at getting everybody else to talk. So that means the statistics don't look good. Like the statistics on the talking don't help you. And so then that led to all these researchers trying to do something better than just counting duration of your talking. So we're going to talk about some communication models here very briefly. This is some theory of communication. And what I hope you'll think as you're looking, whenever I say something like, here's a model or a theory, you should be thinking, well, I don't know if this works for me. Does this work for me? Right? And so we'll think about that. The first one is from Claude Shannon. So Claude Shannon's a famous guy who pretty much invented the technology that allows us to have the internet and digital anything. And what he realized is that he was working for the phone company. And what he realized is that he can characterize information. So I want to pass a message. I have an information source. I have a message. I want to pass it to Prof. Mohit, who's over here. And so I have my source. I'm the source. I'm going to transmit it. How am I going to transmit it? I could use WhatsApp. I could talk to him in person. I could, write it on his door. There's different things you could do. And then that's the signal, is the message. And there may be noise in the signal. Like let's say I write it on his door, and then somebody comes along and writes something else on his door that overlaps mine, or maybe tears the thing down a little bit. So this is a mess with my signal. And then he's going to receive it, and we hope he interprets it right. So basically, every arrow you see in this model is where you can screw up, right? Every arrow is where things can go bad. And so Claude Shannon came out and said, well, we're going to pass messages. We're going to try to have special approaches to protect each of these arrows. And when they, is anyone at the right age to remember modems for dialing up? Did you all ever have modems? Like you're at home on your phone and you dial, connect to the internet, and it's like, you know, this sort of, yeah. So that is the modeling the noise source. That's the modem trying to figure out how much noise is on my line, how much parameters do I adjust to compensate for the noise.
Even while tuning in the radios.
Yeah, and the radios too. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So this is a really important sort of model for how we got digital communication at all. But I'm not sure it's going to help us a lot with communication between people. You know, maybe you can be inspired by it, something like that. Yeah, so there's 3 ways to, and you can say, was my message successful? Well, you can say that 3 ways to say successful. The technical version is, did it get through? Yes, he got the words. But maybe my words were vague and it's like, meet me at 3, and he thought I meant today, but it's really tomorrow. So that's the, semantic part. Did my message convey the right meaning? Maybe it did or did not. And then the effectiveness, did it have the right impact or effect? So when you're looking at effectiveness of communication, you can measure different things. So the problem with this, though, I just talked about with the people, is it's about messages. So there's nothing about people and their goals and their, whether they're stressed or they're pressured. Yeah, that sort of thing. So we need another model. So I would say this model is not enough, right? You hear the model and you're like, okay, nice model, but it doesn't help me out. So now we have structural communication and linguistics. The linguistics world analyzed conversations between people and realized that there's this thing called turn taking, and they started analyzing structures of speech. Like, you can have conversation with some people and they'll say, so do you think we should move the flowers over here? Or somebody said, we should move the flowers over here, right? And you can look at structures like that. And that's sometimes helpful, but it's not as good if I analyze all the parts of speech and the grammar. That doesn't really help me with why 2 people failed at good communication. So that I'm going to, we can be informed by that model, but it's not going to help us out. Distributed cognition was inspired by this guy Hutchins, who rode on a US Navy ship. Okay, and he's at the front of the ship on the bridge where they're steering the ship. And what he noticed is that there were about 7 people on the bridge, and each of them had different roles that were tightly integrated so that you couldn't really say that one person was steering the ship. It was like the team of 7. And they had communication between each other. And so he was arguing that the team of 7 has cognition like a unit of a group of people, like a single human has cognition. He said this group has cognition. And that was the distributed cognition idea. And I would say this is not a hot topic yet, but I think it will come back as we start doing more AI human integration. And maybe people will talk about cognition of the duo. Like, I'm working closely with my AI agent, and how effective am I at my distributed cognition between me and the agent? Okay, common ground is one of the most helpful ones. Common ground is often what you do when you first meet somebody. You're like, oh, I'm from Marissa. Are you from Marissa? And you establish. I think people are sort of wired to, like, they come in and they meet somebody and they're like, oh, do you like, this food? I like this food. And they establish some common ground. And that means that, it's too hard to meet you and say, I need to know everything your brain knows, and I need to send you everything my brain knows so you'll know, are we compatible? Are we like this? Or this, or this, or, where are we in relation to each other? And that's too hard. And so instead we do these common ground moves, right? And you'll often, I don't know, is it popular here to talk about the weather? Not so much. Okay. So in the Midwest where I come from, almost every conversation starts with the weather. They're like, oh, it's unusually hot today, or it's not as hot as normal today, or it's windy today. And it's sort of useless, but it's establishing common ground, right? Is there a topic that everybody starts with here? Like when you first...
Very humid.
Very humid. So you might say it's humid. Okay, yeah. But if you're going to start, if you meet a stranger and you're supposed to, talk with them a little bit, is there a first topic you're going to hit? Food. Okay, yeah. Well, how do you like your bread or something like this, right? So food would be a common ground topic. And when here's the things you learn about with the common ground. Like, what if I say, do you like puri for breakfast, right? And they're going to like, oh yeah, I like puri. So if they don't respond the way you expect, then you're like, I need to go deeper. I'm a little like, meh. And so you can calibrate with the other person. And you can also calibrate, like, what if they take too long to respond? You're like, oh, maybe they have learning disabilities and I need to talk more slowly. So there's all this calibration that you're doing with another person in just 30 seconds or 60 seconds, right?
So common ground can be different for generation. If we had a generation gap, the common ground maybe affect the conversation.
That's right. Yeah, he's asking about different generations where they share these common grounds. So you might have to work harder to find the common ground, right? You might have to say, maybe the food would work, right? Because the food has lasted, perhaps. But if it's about Instagram, there's probably not something, I don't know, right?
Elder people are more engaged in sports stuff.
Okay, that's great. If they know their sports, you can say, what did you see this last match, right? And this is a good technique. If you're an engineer and socializing doesn't come naturally, which is true for some engineers, then you can use this as a technique. You're like, okay, I'm going to find the common ground quickly, and you have your topics you're going to roll out, and then people will talk to you. Yeah. So, and it can be nonverbal as well, right? It can be gestures and all sorts of things. Oh yeah, and I talked about the calibration. So you're building a mental model of your partner. I'm talking to this person. Like, how are they doing? Oh, and I should also say that this happens in job interviews too, right? So there'll be these Zoom job interviews. And I have former students who are now working at the big companies like Google and Meta, and they'll say, oh yeah, we have these Zoom interviews, and they'll say, oh, the interviews are often like 10 or 15 minutes, but within 2 or 3 minutes if like you want to deal with this person, right? And so they're making those judgments. I'm not going to argue that's fair, right? It's not necessarily fair because they're stereotyping. They might be judging based on how attractive they are or whether they share attributes, but they are making those conclusions. Like, our brain is processing that very fast. Because it's a survival instinct a little bit. Like, if you're talking to a stranger, you might there's a very small possibility this person could bring out a knife and chase me with a weapon, right? So are they going to do this? Okay. Oh yeah, so these are other methods for grounding besides topics. So the cognitive artifacts are things like notes or diagrams. So are we doing okay? Yeah. If I'm decide to build a new house and I hire an architect and a construction engineer, those people speak very different languages, right? But the blueprint of the house can serve as common ground. So we can all look at the blueprint and share in this artifact. I may not understand the architect and the engineer, but I can say, I want my kitchen to be like this. And they say, okay. The Zoom, it's interesting that you can think of the different affordances or features of these communication modes. So WhatsApp and messaging like that doesn't allow you as much about emotion. And so then we have all these emojis that are like supposed to help with that. Zoom, you get to see people's face more. So they have different affordances. And then the social norms too. Like I just said, in the Midwest, we're always talking about weather. So if you came, but we talk about food too. So if you came to the Midwest in the US and you're like talking about food, the people would be like, oh great, I understand this person. But maybe I come here, I talk about the weather, and you're like, why is he talking about the weather? Right, so might be norms. There's some people in this article that this is all based on who have gone into more detail on what does it mean for affordances to be good affordances. Affordances are something like a teapot has a handle, which is an affordance for picking up and pouring, right? So good design things have affordances. This has a nice affordance for pulling the chair in and out. It's a little handle. And you can review the affordances for building common ground. Are they visible? Are they contemporaneous, like for both of the people in the communication? Can I see them? Can I change them? So there's a big thing about indirect communication. So in different cultures, there's a concept of power distance, which is to what extent is your boss your friend versus somebody you bow down to, right? So when I lived in Namibia, for example, we got to know, in Namibia, wherever you go and you park, there are these parking guys. And the parking guys come out and say, I will protect your car. And then you're expected to pay the parking guys a little bit of money afterwards. And I think really what I've heard is that these are the guys that used to steal things from your car, but now they get more money by saying, I will protect your car. But they don't really do much. But you always do this, and everybody gives them a couple cents. And so when I went back to Namibia a year later, after we lived there, several of the parking guys remembered me, and they're like, oh, Prof. Stephen. And two of them bent down to kiss my shoes. And I was like, whoa. Like, I'm not used to that, right? So that's a big power distance. They're thinking of me as a big power distance. And traditionally, power distance is bigger in Asian countries. I don't know how much it is in India, but especially like Japan, it's like really high, like your boss, is way up here. In Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, it's very low, and you're out playing golf with your boss. But this can be a danger, and then I put an aerospace here in healthcare because there are examples. There's a very sad example. Airplanes have black boxes that record the conversations. And there's a sad example from a Japanese airline where the co-pilot knows that they're doing the wrong thing, like they're flying the wrong direction. But the power distance between him and the pilot is so great that he can't tell him outright. So he's not going to be like, you're flying the wrong way. Like that would be the American version, right? Or the Swedish version. And instead, he's like, don't you think we should check our heading? And the pilot's like, no, we're fine. Don't you think we should check our altitude? This sort of thing. And then they crash. Like the whole plane crashes because he's not communicating. And I'm like, okay, this is awful. And you end up with similar things in healthcare. So there's a power distance between doctors and nurses often. And different countries have it differently, but in a lot of places, the doctors are like, we're up here, and the nurses are like, okay, we are the humble servants. And but nurses are smart enough to notice things going wrong. Oh, the anesthesia is not going right, this sort of thing. And if they don't feel like they can communicate with the doctor, that's not going to work. Right? So part of what you're looking for is this indirect, that's called indirect communication, when it's like, don't you think we should check the altitude? Okay. This is a brief definition of team versus group. So team has a shared, they have a desired outcome with shared responsibility. A group is more like, oh, we're all going to dinner together. Coordination is a little bit more robust. The coordination is what the team's doing, but the cooperation and collaboration is more just, oh, we're doing things together, but the coordination is like, we are planning carefully. Right? And so in the early lectures, I showed this, right, with the information processing. And so there were some people in the team model who said, hey, let's do that with a bunch of them. And so let's have several of these and have group information processing model. And we're going to go through all the different, how fast does the group process the inputs? How fast does the group do this thing? And that doesn't work so well. It is what you call reductionist, meaning we sort of lose sight of, is there this phrase here about the forest for the trees? Like you don't see the forest because you're looking at the trees. I don't know, maybe that's not a phrase here. All right, but maybe you get it. It's like I'm looking at this one tree and I forget to look at the whole big picture. So this is the problem with this, because I get down to tracking the timing for individual communications, and it's difficult with this model to get out to the big picture of were they successful at communicating. And and so some people call this microcognition because it's like down in the tiny level. So then there became macrocognition. And this fellow Gary Klein is famous for this. And Gary Klein is a big influence in this field of team behaviors and monitoring teams. And in case you're wondering, why does Stephen care about teams so much? Most projects are done by teams, right? And if I'm a manager and I say, which team should I give? Am I give the next project to you or you? Like, ideally, I need some model of like, well, they're a really good team on the last project, and my new project is, is it related enough to their project that they're going to be a good team on that one, or maybe not? I don't know. It's hard to analyze that sort of question. But it's important in workplace. So, here's Gary Klein says, here's what you need. You need shared mental models. We all share the mental model of what we're doing here. Like, what are we doing here now? So when I gave you the speculative fiction assignment, hopefully pretty quickly you could get to the point of like, oh, what are we doing here? We're doing this assignment. We all understand. And the adapting is interesting. So if you're a team and you may realize like, oh, one of us is a better programmer than the other, so maybe you should do the programming part and I'm going to do the writing part, that sort of thing. And that clear communication about roles, the statement I just made about you do this, you do that, that's willingness to communicate. Instead of just one person be like, well, I'm going to do the programming, and they just do it. I've seen teams where one person just starts to do the stuff, and the other people are like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I thought I was going to help with the programming, and they didn't communicate. Okay, so here's what gets more interesting. And I'm biased because I think it's more interesting because the paper in the folder about this is one of mine. But I think it's a good paper. What I recommend on this paper, if you download this paper, the Sautelaire all the way to Gilbert, is that you ignore the first half. It's a very long paper. Ignore the first half because it's a meta-analysis of many, many teaming papers. But you can skip that, and the second half is these behavioral markers we pulled out about, for example, how do you measure trust on a team? Like, do the teammates trust each other? So we would say things like, okay, based on analyzing many, many papers, we see that behavioral markers are things like occurrences of team members seeking out opinions of other team members. So I can say, hey, what do you think of what I just did on the project? That means I trust you. That means I trust that you're not going to be like, you are terrible, and criticize me. So that means we have good rapport. And then some things are reverse coded. So reverse coded, normal coded is if I see more of this, I have more trust. Reverse coded is if I see more of this, I have less trust. So if I'm reminding each other, I'm like, hey, you really got to do that thing, remember that? That if I say that a lot, that you're getting the message like, oh, you don't trust me. You feel like you got to remind me all the time. Who are you? So that's reverse about the more of that you have, the less trust you have. So we were proud in this paper to get a little bit closer to coming up with behaviors that we could count. Like our goal was to what can I actually count on a team? Just like when you're a video game analysis, you're like, what can I count to show expert play, expert strategies? So these are things we feel like we can count. Now, the hard thing is it's not easy to count these necessarily. It's not easy to have an AI count these for us. Right? Sometimes a human is involved. Here's one on collective efficacy. Efficacy is a fancy word for confidence. Self-efficacy is about self-confidence. I could say, what's your self-efficacy with using Google Docs? And you're like, oh, I'm great at Google Docs. Or maybe you're like, oh, I'm medium at Google Docs. And that's your confidence. Collective efficacy is what's your team efficacy. So if I have good collective efficacy, team members are going to acknowledge each other. They're going to request backup when they need it, that sort of thing. They're working well together. They're confident they can work well together. We had cohesion, which is like team spirit. If you own up to your mistakes, if you, celebrate achievements, things like that. And it's funny, you might think like, oh, occurrence of phrases like, we make a great team. You might think that's just a throwaway phrase, like we did well together as a team, and you say, oh yeah, we were good today. But that really matters. Like that's going to affect your sense of the team, for the next week or two, at least, right? So some of that really helps. So in the cognitive engineering world, here are a bunch of big challenges, right? And I should have updated this slide to be like, we've got human robot teams, but we need human AI teams as well. You want distributed teams like on Zoom, right? So many of the workplaces now still have the workers all distributed at home, working from home. What sort of technology? You know, if you three are working together but you're at different faraway places, what sort of technology can we give you that gives you a sense of how's the project going? Are we behind or are we ahead? Are we successful? You know, and there are these websites like Jira, and there's a variety of people trying to do this. I haven't seen it feel great yet. I've seen people do it decently, but okay. So now let's talk about trust. Yes.
That in this paper,
Sorry?
in this paper that you were discussing.
Yeah, the subtle air paper, yeah.
Who is marking this? Is every team member marking it?
So yeah, his question is who's marking all these things that you're going to measure about like trust or something like that? So we would record sessions from teams and then the researchers would mark it. Right? So the team members themselves, maybe the team members themselves could do something. Maybe some AI technology that's listening to our recordings could do it, but mostly it's been researchers listening to recordings.
In practice, when say a team has 8-9 members,
Yeah.
usually in every team there'll be two people at least would not be actually working, or they're not really as much involved as the others are probably. So how do we know that he's a good team member with him but not with the other? How that whole connection, how is that measured?
Yeah. Like how many, like ideally I would know enough about the team that I could say, oh, if I put these people together, this one's going to not work because he feels dominated by this one or intimidated or something like that. Yeah. So I don't have an easy answer for you, but I feel like these are metrics that could get you closer, right? And you could start looking at, okay, their team did work together and I saw this contribution from him and this contribution from him and this contribution from him, and they were not balanced. Maybe, but on the other team, when it was just them two and him, then it was a different dynamic. You know, and you start modeling the team and then the employees. So ideally, you're going to have, I feel like in the perfect company, you would have this model. You know, I've got 20 software developers, say, and I've got a model of who works well with whom and who pairs well, who works, you know.
Is that qualitative assessment?
Sorry?
Is that qualitative assessment?
It can be,
Or
I mean,
quantitative?
it's a good question. I feel like it's quantitative because I'm counting stuff and I'm pretty objective. So if I am going to count these, I think I could train you to count the same way I count, and then it would be objective.
What parameters we are basically calculating and how we are calculating those things?
So we're going to, I mean, I would have measures of trust, measures of team cohesion.
A measure of trust. Trust, how we are going to calculate that.
So this would be, for example, on this, I could say there's 8 measures of trust, and I've got,
How many persons in a team are responding that so based on that.
yeah, that's right.
So that is basically the frequency we are going to calculate.
Yeah.
How many are giving the same kind of the answers about the others, like that. And we can record that.
Right. I could do this for different team members. I could do it for the whole team and then count it up and sum it up and say, you know, here's my team score.
It's like a Likert scale and there's a mean of it.
I mean, you could do Likert, but then it's more subjective, right? It's more somebody estimating. I'm talking about you get a recording and you actually count the number of times that information is withheld from somebody or the number of times that they ask for backup. They send backup.
Am I correct? Like number of opportunities you had and how many of them went right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, so I feel like we move the field forward a little bit with the table like this because these are actually countable, but it's not necessarily clear how to score it and like what equation to use.
Something
Something.
like a survey. Like we ask for like a survey form and we ask them.
I mean, I think it'd be more objective if you had a recording of them and you just counted things. I mean, you could do survey things, but then it's self-report.
Something like asking someone in the last 1 week, how many members followed you up in your team?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could do survey each person, how much do you trust the other person? There's other measures. I like to keep it objective if I
So
can,
these
right?
results, so whatever the outcomes we are getting from these results,
Yeah.
okay, analysis. So how we are going to correlate with the cognitive load or cognitive skills?
So I think the outcome of this would tell me, okay, this group of people will make a good team, and this other group of people will make a not as good team. And so when I move forward, I'm going to need to pick this team. And that could be for product design or for analysis or whatever. So I think it's part of the cognitive engineering because you're trying to, your cognitive engineering to me is about fixing
So the teams
teamwork.
who are going to get less score will be having the more cognitive loads.
You could argue that too, and more mistakes. Yeah, they're going to make more mistakes at work.
So there will be more cognitive loads on that. Something like that.
It might be more load. I'm not sure you could link it directly to load, but maybe. I think you're going to link it directly to performance. So the team that's not as good is going to have lower performance.
So because this is going to affect the performance.
Yeah,
So in that way we can correlate.
that's right. So if I have a doctor and two nurses doing surgery, and they really don't trust each other because the doctor was harassing the nurses, like that's going to be a bad surgery. Like it's not going to be a good surgery.
Before this topic, what you discussed, like the communication and the
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
So what about the information which we are receiving through some messages? Okay, that was something like that. So the amount of information which is contained in a message, right? So based on that, how we can calculate the cognitive loads?
So you could rate communication by how effective it is on, if I.
Is there any direct relationship? Is there any formula? Is there?
I think.
Parameters you could calculate. You should calculate the cognitive loads.
I don't think directly on the cognitive load, but if I have difficult communication, I'm going to have to spend more time thinking about what you mean. If you tell me something about.
Like common grounds you told, right?
Right.
So this common ground, so based on that, how we'll calculate this? There is no direct measure is there. Interpretation only.
Well, what I would prefer is that there's an objective way to measure the common ground, right? And we have like concepts and I think we try to encourage that, but it's not always possible. So I think it's like we're trying to take communication, which is really a fuzzy topic, and it's like, oh, that's like psychology. And we're trying to be an engineer and say, if I'm going to be an engineer and I like to count things and measure things, how do I measure communication? How do I measure trust? So it's like I'm taking these fuzzy topics and trying to measure things. I don't know. Does that help? Yeah. Okay, so a little bit more on trust. Trust can be this psychological thing, like I trust you and I feel, warm feelings about you because I trust you. But it can also be behaviors that result. And can I measure it, right? So on the psychological side, we have papers that talk about, to what extent is one part of the team going to help the other part? Are they going to rely on each other? It's some of these same topics we just talked about. And the thing I really wanted to get to is this idea of these four concepts. This is from John Lee. John Lee is this guy from Lee and C, and also Meyer and Lee. John Lee is sort of a famous founder person thinking about trust. And this works really well with AI. So I get humans and AI working together. Lee was originally thinking multiple humans, but if I do humans and AI, we can say, okay, compliance. If the smart tractor says you need to stop and adjust your fan speed, then am I going to obey that? Like, do I trust that tractor enough to say, oh, it told me to adjust my fan. I am going to adjust my fan. Or this is like when your parent says you need to wash your hands more. You might say, I don't care, right? You're going to make a judgment about, whether you're going to be compliant. And then the reliance is, how much am I relying on this? I set the tractor to do auto steer through my farm field, and it's auto steering through my field. Am I going to trust it just to let it go and not worry about it? The spillover is am I going to act, I internalize the AI system's guidelines enough that I'm going to take action without it prompting me? Here it's a prompting me, like, hey, you need to do this thing. And the spillover is like, I've been tutored by this agent, like, brought up like a parent would teach a child. So they teach you to brush your teeth maybe, and then later in life you brush your teeth without them telling you. And then reactance is the opposite. Reactance is like, no, I'm not going to do that. You told me to do this thing? Like, I'm the one who knows me better, right? And you get some people like that. The system, especially in the US military, thinks a lot about this because they'll worry that there's some soldier who's deciding, okay, is this the bad guy, or should I send a drone over here? And the system will say, you should do this. And the soldier's like, what? I'm the expert here. Like, don't tell me what to do. Right? So you need to have the system sometimes be more gentle. So we have the Teslas here, right? And I just put examples of this. So examples of the compliance, reliance, spillover, reactance. In this ad, it says self-driving car. Well, there's no true well, I shouldn't say there's no. Well, there's no truly self-driving car yet. But we have these Teslas that'll, do some autopilot. And you look in the fine print, and it's like, technologies do not guarantee that a driver would not suffer injury. So there are these different levels of autonomy of the vehicles. And the Teslas are like, well, I can drive a little bit. And then you get the Waymos, which, I don't know if you've seen the Waymos, which have no human in them. But they're still not truly autonomous because there's a human that can dial in from the headquarters and steer them remotely. So here's a brief ad from this guy who's supposed to be a big, tough sports star, but he's worried about AI. LeBron James. So let's see LeBron James here. Let's see if it will load. Am I loading? Yeah, I'm still on Wi-Fi. Okay.
Some people are fearless. No pressure too great, no stage too big, not afraid of anything.
Yo, bro, your car's here. Nope, it's safe.
It seems like 80 times better than you do.
But I see there's no driver. Get in.
Intel is helping power autonomous cars you can trust, so we can all be fearless.
Hey, yo, I'm keeping this. I'm keeping it.
Okay, so this is an Intel ad, but I've ridden in these twice. I don't know. Are they in India, the driverless cars like this? I don't know if they're here yet. They're in the US, they're only in like 5 cities. And it is a little weird. You're in this car and it's going by itself. But at one point we're in the car and it comes to an intersection, and both roads have like 2 lanes on each direction. So it comes to an intersection and and the stoplight's broken. And there's a police officer in the middle directing traffic. Like, okay, you stop, y'all come on, now you stop, you come on. And he was like, you stop to the Waymo car, and it stopped. And I was like, huh. And then he's like, okay, come on, and the car just goes. And I was like, I don't believe that that's real, like that's humanless, right? So then one of my friends who works in this, he's like, oh no, that's when the human took over your car from headquarters and was like making it go the right way. Because we're not there yet. So that's, it's still interesting. So there's some trust if you're going to be trusting these vehicles with your life, or like, would you put your 5-year-old, once we get these vehicles popular, or maybe there's going to be autos that are self-driving, right? And you call up the auto and you're like, take my 5-year-old to grandma's house. Like, are you going to trust it to do that? I don't know. So there's this idea of explainable AI, or XAI. So, and this came up in the military because if the AI is saying that brown van is the bad guy, you need to shoot the brown van. Currently in the US military, they don't have AI making death decisions, like shoot the thing. They have the AI recommending these things, and then humans have to check it. And so what you want is this explainable AI where you can ask the system, well, why do you think it's the brown van? And it would then tell you, like, okay, I've seen the brown van 4 different places where we've also seen the suspects, and in 2 of those places there was bomb material, and so it gives you the whole justification, and you can be like, okay, I get it, it probably is the brown van. But if it doesn't have a good explanation, which a lot of AI doesn't, a lot of AI is just like, yeah, I've got 80% confidence that's the brown van. Then you're left with like, okay, I'm not going to base my shooting on that. So everybody wants explainable AI, but it's hard because machine learning and neural network systems don't have, they're all just numbers. There's not a lot of explanation inside, right? Okay, so briefly on teaming. Have people heard this phrase, forming, storming, norming, performing? This is the idea that you get together as a team, like I randomly assigned you all to teams in the activities, and you're forming together. And it's like, oh, hi, my name's Steven, my name's Mohit, whatever, we're a team. And then and everything's friendly. And then the storming happens usually a little bit later, like when you're a multi-week project, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought you were gonna do the thing, but you didn't do the thing, and I thought we were meeting at 9, but we're meeting at 10. Like, you didn't tell me, and people they get cross with each other. The norming is about having norms of behavior. So after you work together enough, you can establish team norms, and then you say, okay, now we know how to work together. We know each other's schedules. We know that we like to communicate on WhatsApp in these ways, and then you can really perform. And I say it can be hard and okay to talk about. What this means is that if it's a good team, you periodically ask yourselves as teams, how are we doing as a team? And it sounds a little awkward, right? It doesn't sound like normal conversation, but it's really valuable. If you're doing a team project that's like 2 months long, at least once a week, be like, how are we doing as a team? Are we communicating well? And that gives an opening for somebody to say, I wish we knew more about X. I wish you would tell me more ahead of time, or something like that. So here are 3 basic challenges. I talked about the power distance. And so teams that have lower power distance tend to work better together. But you can't fight culture and training too much, right? But you can try to do what you can. So by the people who believe this, for example, at my university, we're taught to learn when the students' birthdays are and to acknowledge them, be like, hey, it's your birthday today, I brought some cake in, or something like that, or a muffin or something. And so that's one way to reduce power distance a little bit. But it depends on where you are. This is the idea that you might not be a good team member if most of your life you've been told, for example, to shut up. Or if you're a part of a big family and you don't have a lot of time, or if this happens a lot in the US where we have these minorities who are darker skinned or people of color, we say, and the teachers are not like, I'm a racist teacher. They don't think they're racist, but they tend to not call on the people with colored skin as much. They just have statistics about like, oh, they don't call on as much. So then that is effectively telling the person, your voice is not so important. And then there's this diversity. I talked about the Big 5 personality scale. If you want to learn about your personality, you can go Google something like Big 5 test, and then you can learn how extroverted you are and that sort of thing. And this is useful. For example, in our department at work, they made all the professors do this test. And then we had to share our results with everybody. And what was interesting there is there's a guy I've been working with, Michael Dornick, who I share a lot of interests with him. And he came up extremely introverted. And I tend to come out extremely extroverted. And they were describing what that means. So the introverted people, social interactions are tiring, right? So you go to a party and you have to recover later. And introverted people tend to avoid conflict because it takes a lot of energy. And I'm like, oh, Michael doesn't like conflict. Huh. Which was new to me. I'm more like, if there's a conflict, like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out together right now. And I realized I had these conversations with Michael where he was feeling really awkward and he tried to shut him down quickly. I'm like, oh. So that's sometimes useful to know that to be a better team. And to think about, you can fix this for humans and you can also fix it for human AI teams. All right, I'm going to skip over that. Okay, here's an activity you can do very briefly. Just on writing or on your phone. There are traits about you and your identity, and you have a choice about some traits and you don't have a choice about other traits. Like I can't change the fact that I'm white and male and tall and that I was born in Texas. But I also chose to be an engineer, I chose to get married, chose to be a dad. I did scouts a lot and camping, and I play the accordion. So I can choose those things. So then write down some things briefly about yourselves. Just spend 5 minutes doing this. Like 2 columns. Things about you that you can't change, things that you can. Let's do this for 5 minutes. And you don't have to share them. You're not going to share this with anybody, so you don't have to feel embarrassed. You can write it on your phone. You can do whatever you want. Just spend a little time thinking about it for a second. So as you're doing this, it's for some people it's really interesting to do this and reflect a little longer on it. I'm not giving you as much time here, but you can ask them questions about, here are these identity tags. How do they affect the job I'm going to have? Right? How do they affect what sort of interactions I have with other people? How do they affect the career I'm going to study? Right? And so how do they affect things and who you are? It's just worth thinking a little bit about it, and it's both for yourself and it also trains you to think about other people. So you get somebody, like maybe I join your team and you're like, oh, I got this tall white American on my team. What do I need to do about that? Like, do I need to do anything special? Do I need to make sure he has milder Indian food? I don't know. So it makes you think some about accommodating the other team members. And that way of thinking is going to help with the AI team members as well. Like, what does this AI know about me? And what are its tags? Like, does it have tags? Does it have an identity? A lot of the AIs right now are programmed to flatter you. Like ChatGPT will be like, great idea, And yeah. Okay. I'll also just note that it's hard to talk about this stuff sometimes because it's implicitly when you talk about this, it brings up the fact that people aren't as equal as we wish they were. Like, I have benefited in my life a lot from parents who really valued education and pushed me through education. And even though I grew up with a single mom and was pretty poor, she valued that hard enough that she married a wealthier guy, and then we got, that helped me out. So, but not everybody has those opportunities. So then you're with your peers and you're like, okay, when you start talking about these things, you're like, wow, people aren't so equal. We started at different starting lines. And so that makes it awkward. But sometimes it's worth understanding a little bit. There's an idea, if you're interested in this, choke is a book about why people practice for something and then choke, meaning fail, on like an exam. Like maybe you're studying for your math exam and you study and you study and you study and then the exam comes and you choke and you fail. Or you're an athlete and you're like practicing your move, you're golfing, you're practicing, and then the big championship you fail. So why does that happen? And it's a whole book about that. If you're interested in that, I can recommend it. It's really well written. But part of the thing is there's this idea of stereotype threat. And so studies have shown that if you are about to do behavior that will demonstrate a stereotype, then your brain is going to spend around 10% of its capacity worrying about that. So in the US, there's a stereotype that girls aren't as good at math. And it's not true, right? But there's a stereotype. And so then they would do studies like they welcome the girls and the boys into the room and they say, we're going to have a math test. Please check the box at the top about what your gender is. And then if they, the people get reminded of what gender they are, and in that test, the women will do worse. But if they bring everybody together and say, we're going to do a math test, this test has been specially designed to have no gender bias whatsoever, then the girls don't do worse. Right? So there's this, or if it's me, in the US, the stereotype is that black people are better at basketball than white people. So if I go do pickup basketball and I'm the white guy and everybody else is black, I'm going to be worried about my doing worse and demonstrating a stereotype, so my performance is going to be worse. Right? So this can happen with all sorts of stereotypes. It could happen between regions of India or older, younger, things on. Okay, and this is all about group dynamics. I think Prof. Mohit is like, what does this have to do with cognitive engineering? But to me, this is about modeling groups, right? And I just want to point out that these are people that I've formed really nice friendship relationships with over time. And my work as an engineer may not last, right? Especially if you're high tech. You do high tech work and it could be gone in 2 years and obsolete. Or you could do something more engineering, maybe it lasts 5 years. But the relationships can last 20 years, right? So just as you go through your career, be sure to value the relationships too, and not just be like, oh, we did the thing. Good. Okay, so let me see. I think given the compressed morning, I may skip some slides here. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say is that we're most comfortable with people like us because we have free common ground. If I don't have common ground with you, it takes mental load. It takes mental workload to get the common ground. So our brains are lazy. We want to go as quick as we possible. So if I find people that are like me, then I don't have to do extra work. But I will urge you to do that anyway. Find people who are different than you, that you will do better, right? You will have new ideas. You'll have different kinds of ideas. When I was growing up, I went to an all-boys school from grades 2 through 12. And we had our uniforms, private school, and there was an all-girls school down the road. And I think it took me about 2 years to recover from that experience. I learned a lot, but it screwed up my ability to have friends who were girls. So it took about 2 years for me to learn to have friends who were girls. And when I did, then we started having discussions with whole new topics and whole new outlooks. And I was like, oh, look what I was missing out on for like high school at least. Or maybe junior high we could throw away because your hormones are just out of whack. But there was a lot of messed up, right? And so if you can find other people to have conversations with that are different than you, you'll really benefit. Yeah.